Florida State has wrapped up the exit part of the 2023 spring transfer window, and now it's about who they can go out and get to replace talent and replenish a few spots on this roster. We're going to talk to you really quickly about who they lost during this window, who they're targeting, and who might be some potential good fits for some of the positions that they lost. Richie, thanks for joining me for a couple of minutes today. We will quickly run down some of the guys that left and who we think may have a bigger impact than others there. And then we'll get to some potential targets, a guy visiting this week, kind of give you a portal breakdown, as portal month is going to be pretty hot and heavy here in May. All right, a big one that I think a lot of people maybe didn't see coming, one that came out of nowhere, was Micah Pittman, Florida State wide receiver and punt catch / return specialist. Was a really, really good piece for the Noles, was a really, really good locker room guy. Left with Mike Norvell's blessing, which if you're on social media, you can kind of read between the lines of who the guys that Mike gives the old thumbs up and pat on the back to. They're on social media as maybe whether they left in good graces or not. But Micah Pittman did get that. Really, really good guy who I think this one kind of came out of left field and not a lot of people were expecting. But Pittman put his name in the portal just a couple of days ago and was probably the most surprising entry in the portal that we've seen.
Yeah, and you know, it's one of those situations where he probably wasn't going to play a lot this year, if at all. So I think he kind of knew that. But he is a graduate transfer, so he's not going to have to sit out a year. So if he is healthy, he can play at his new school. It's just kind of confusing to me. I'm surprised to see it. You know, he put out one of his vlogs recently about spring camp and how much fun he was having and all of that good stuff. But, you know, it's definitely, I think you hit the nail on the head, not with the punt returner, but the punt catcher, because that's something Florida State has struggled with mightily throughout the years, going back to, we all remember Tavares McFadden, who would just let the ball drop and roll 20 yards back. So definitely a loss for Florida State, especially if he would have been healthy. But, you know, next man up, and we move on from there.
So he was one that I don't think we were expecting. A couple others that we were kind of expecting. We threw this in our Discord. If you haven't joined that, you can go join it. You can become a member of the YouTube or Patreon to get access to the exclusive chats. Travis J jumped in the portal. I won't spend super long on a bunch of these. I don't necessarily think that was his decision. I think that that was, we'll call it mutual at best. Zane Herring, Steven Dix, and Tavius Woody, guys that jumped in the portal who I think just at this point had maybe been recruited over a little bit. I don't know that they were going to have a real strong chance to get a lot of reps, to get a lot of playing time here. And I think Florida State is excited to see those guys go on and potentially have a place to play, get some reps, get some snaps. One that I don't think Florida State wanted to happen was Duke Cooper. Duke had obviously a really good finish to the year in 2021. Just couldn't get things going here in 2022 last season. Moved to safety this spring, and I've just heard that transition didn't happen as well or as loved as both sides would have liked. I do think Florida State very much wanted to keep Duke Cooper. I don't think that was one that they were thrilled about losing, but Duke Cooper enters the portal as well. And then obviously Derek McClendon, who we've talked about plenty, Brendan Gant, both of them actually ending up at Colorado. Brendan Gant, we told this to the Discord yesterday, was not with the team. He was sidelined, we'll say, for a violation or a suspension. He wasn't currently with the team practicing, working out when he put his name in the portal. Didn't play in the spring game, and you can kind of imagine why there. Shortly after, commits to Colorado. It sounds like he and DMAC will go out there. But anything else stick out to you there from the departure, Richie, before we get to some key guys visiting this weekend, and pun intended there, and some other possible targets?
No, I think the Duke Cooper loss is, you know, it's unfortunate, but it sounds like he did not really want to be a safety at heart. He really wants to be a corner. And Florida State said, no, we need you at safety. So that makes sense. And that'll kind of lead into what we're going to talk about next. Talking about the other guys, you know, you mentioned when Mike Norvell gives that, you know, that endorsement, so to speak, when he quotes the transfer tweets. We didn't see it with a few guys, and Derek McLennan, one of them. We heard the stories of him kind of trying to sabotage the roster. So, I'm not surprised there, and best of luck to him at Colorado. But, yeah, I don't think Florida State's going to miss a whole lot, but I do think that there is some depth pieces that are unfortunate for Florida State. But, again, the portal is still open. The portal giveth, the portal taketh. So here we go.
All right, well, we will jump into it then. Jaylen Key. I think this is an interesting one. Zach Blostein of Noles 247 reporting that he will visit this weekend. Went to Godby High School. He's from Tallahassee, Florida. Safety prospect who is highly sought after. Just came out with a top 6, Florida State in there, Alabama, Oregon, UNC, some other ones as well. Really good player. I think he could come in. We were asked about him last night. I think he could come in and push for a starting spot. I really like what Akeem Dent has done in his career in Tallahassee. I like Shaheem Brown's athleticism. I don't know that, I'll say this. The safety position is probably the position that concerns me the most this year. I don't know that Jaylen Key would come in and start day one or anything like that, especially missing spring, but I think he would get in get plenty of burn. I think Brown and Dent are probably your starters for the LSU game, but I think Key could come in and do a ton. Now, you are going up against Alabama, and he's already visited there. I think that Florida State prioritized Key a little bit more over the last few days after losing Travis Jay, losing Amarion Cooper to the transfer portal. They've certainly upped what their communication level has been. And I think they'd really, really like to get him in. Florida State's done a very good job of moving quickly on guys in the portal. I'll say this, they haven't gone up against Alabama too many times in this form or fashion. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think Florida State really wants Jaylen Key. I think they're going to make him a priority. But they are going up against the legend that is Nick Saban. And so we'll see what happens. Hopefully, being a hometown kid, we're able to kind of get a foot up or a leg up there. But we'll see. Jaylen Key visiting this weekend, as Zach Blostein of Noles 247 reported. Richie, this would be a pretty good way to fill in that roster gap there left by Robinson and now Cooper.
Yeah, and it's a big deal, and I think Florida State can sell him on he is a priority based on the portal exits. Whether those guys were going to play much or not, it doesn't matter. You lost 2 safeties, right? At 3 if you include Jamie Robinson. Shout out Carolina, big time excited for him at the Panthers. But yeah, he's a guy. He's a local kid from Tallahassee. Went to UAB. Like you said, TJ, not just going to Alabama, but a defensive back, which is Saban's specialty. That's a tall task. But I do think the fact that, Florida State can say, listen, you're going to play, whether you may not start, but you might start in our nickel packages. It may be something as simple as that. Coming back home, I think he has to be, the top priority, number 1 for Florida State in the portal this session or this time around. And I think if Mike Norvell gets him on campus, which he sounds like he will this weekend, that's a big deal.
Yeah. He's certainly target number 1 for me. I think that the other targets, the other position groups where I'd like to take somebody are linebacker, defensive end, and maybe wide receiver if you could find somebody that can really stretch the field. Although I do think we have a couple of guys on the field that can do that. They just need to come out and prove it. But yeah, defensive end, linebacker are important. I think I'm happy with what we have there. If we're not able to add a real difference maker, I think we're still in really good shape. Safety is the position group that worries me the most. Going into last year, I said cornerback was that position group, and I think it is safety this year. So we'll see. I think Key would be really, really important for Florida State to pick up. I do have another safety option that we'll talk about in just a few minutes, but we will run through some more of these. Just before I do that, I want to give some love to our friends over at Garnet & Gold. GarnetandGold.com, whether you're looking for NIL, you're looking for licensed FSU apparel, merchandise, swag, something that's for a gift for someone, you can get it all at GarnetandGold.com. You can use code NOSLAW, NOSLAW. We'll save you 15% off your order, whether you're going in person. You can order in the local Tallahassee area and pick it up in person, save that money, or you can order it and have it shipped to you. I think all orders over $75 have free shipping. Doesn't take much to get up over $75 when you're buying Nike and Columbia and different items that are officially licensed. So shop at Garnet and Gold today. Appreciate them for their support. Okay, Antoine Powell-Ryland Jr. He is a defensive end from our big rivals there, just to the south and to the east. UF, 6'3", 233 pounds from Portsmouth, Virginia. A couple years of eligibility remaining. He's kind of a tweener. I don't know that he's a true defensive end. I don't know that he's a true outside linebacker, but I do think he can play that edge position fairly well. UF was not thrilled about losing him. There were rumors swirling around his exit that were quite comical, quite humorous. We won't maybe dive so far deep into those. But 29 tackles, 3 forced fumbles, 3 sacks. What's intriguing to me about Powell-Ryland, and I'm not confirming that there's been any communication or saying that there hasn't been since he's been in the portal, but he's an intriguing prospect to me because he kind of, as a tweener, as somebody who can play at that defensive end, at that edge position, plus maybe stand up as a linebacker, I think he can maybe satisfy a little bit of a need that you've got in both rooms. I think that he would be somebody that Florida State should target, should go after. You can see his 2022 stats. He was pretty productive, 29 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Florida really liked what they had in him, and we joke anytime somebody from one of our rivals jumps in the portal. He was a kid that they admitted, like, we didn't want him to go, right? He was somebody that is really good. He's intriguing to me. I think that he would be a good fit for what Florida State's looking for. You really never know with kids if they're going to be willing to transfer to a rival, what the thoughts around that are or aren't. But he's somebody that I would certainly look at and certainly give a shot. All right, next up, let's look at wide receiver real quick. Zachariah Franklin. He's a 6'1", 185-pound wide receiver, originally out of Cedar Hill, Texas. He's got a year of eligibility left. He is from UTSA. I expect him to have some pretty big suitors. A couple of Texas schools I think are going to get pretty heavily involved here. He is a really, really solid wide receiver. I don't know that he's a guy that stretches the field like you probably want. That's probably what you're missing. But I do think he could come in and be pretty impactful. 93 receptions for a little over 1,100 yards. He had 15 receiving touchdowns. I mean, he was the guy in that offense. Obviously playing at a little bit lower level at UTSA. But I think he's really, really impactful, really solid. I expect the Noles to take a look here. Ultimately, I don't think that they want what he has to offer as much as other schools would. I think he doesn't really fit the need that you have of kind of a burner. And so I think that he ends up going elsewhere. But I do think it's something that Florida State would be wise to and will probably kick the tires on a little bit. Next up is Dylan Brooks, a defensive end who played at Auburn. He's from Roanoke, Alabama. He's got several years of eligibility left. Big kid, 6'4", 245. Really think that he could fit that defensive end profile that Florida State probably is looking for. I think he does a pretty good job of setting the edge. He's a development piece. I mean, he didn't play an absolute ton last year, but I think he does a good job of setting the edge. I don't know how much of a true impact he would make. I don't think he makes an impact as Powell-Ryland does, but I think that if you're looking for somebody that you can develop into a solid piece for the future, he could be your guy. Good frame, good size, and somebody that Florida State could look to potentially bring in at that defensive end position. We'll stay there at defensive end. Isaac Ukwu, really, really talented kid out of James Madison University. He'd obviously be jumping up a level, but he's been in college football for several years. 6'3", 260 pounds. Like I said, just a year left. From Upper Marlboro, Maryland. I think he would come in and have a little bit more of an immediate impact. He had 40 tackles last year, 7.5 sacks, so certainly good against the pass. Likes to get after the quarterback, but again, I think he's pretty good in the run game as well. He could certainly get in and be a rotational piece that is pretty solid for you. I think he is somebody that Florida State may kick the tires on, may reach out to. You know, they've had success bringing guys up from a lower level to this Power 5 level. Isaac Ukwu would be somebody that intrigues me. We'll see if Florida State goes there or not. Demetrius Hill is another defensive back that I think is really, really, really intriguing as well. 6'2", 190 pounds, big kid, defensive back. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, originally from Miami, played at FIU last year, and I love his physicality. I don't mean any disrespect by saying this, but I almost think he plays like Jamie Robinson. I'm not trying to give somebody else the Jamie Robinson pat on the back just yet. Obviously, shout out Jamie going to the Panthers. He's right. There are not 144 players that are better than him that got taken. But this kid plays like him, and he's very athletic. He has that dog in him. I don't know what ends up happening with Key, but I think Hill might be another one that the Noles could potentially look at to fill that void. His impact, I don't know if it would be as immediate, but I do think he would get in and be a very, very solid depth piece and have a couple of years left to play for you. Obviously, gets after things. 95 tackles in a year is nuts. 3 forced fumbles. Also had a sack last year. Sometimes gets up near the line of scrimmage and does play like Jamie did, like Derwin did. Very versatile. I think that Demetrius Hill could be a really, really solid look for the Noles. If Key doesn't work out the way you want, I mean, you've got 5 positions to potentially fill, maybe 4 if Hill comes in, like we all kind of think. Destin Hill, sorry, not Demetrius Hill. If Destin Hill comes in a couple of weeks, you could only have 4 spots left. I think you could theoretically use 2 of those on safeties. I think you could go 2 safeties, 1 linebacker, and 1 defensive end. Again, safety is the position group that worries me the most. I think Hill would be a really, really good fit for what this defense likes to do, wants to do, and he's got really, really good film. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see if any of these guys are targets or if Florida State brings them to campus. I know that Florida State does their due diligence with reaching out to kids. I know that there probably have been conversations with a lot of them. Now that they're in the portal and that's legal, I don't know exactly who's going to make it to campus just yet, other than Key, which has been reported. You can obviously jump in our Discord, and as soon as those things are made known to us or made public, we'll certainly let you know who will be visiting and who the Noles are targeting at these positions. Richie, defensive end, safety, linebacker, wide receiver, not to steal all of the thunder there, but are those the positions that you think you would be looking at to fill the needs and the holes on this roster?
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing for the prospects of this offense heading into 2023, because the fact is, of those 4 positions you just mentioned, wide receiver is the one I'm least worried about. I think Kentron stepping up in the spring was a really big deal. We talked about losing Micah Pittman. We don't know if he was even going to play this year. So I think safety is definitely number 1. You have to find somebody, and we'll see what happens there. And then linebacker, you love your starters, but there's not a lot behind them. And then defensive end, same thing. You love your starters, but what do we have behind them? So I think, the fact that we're talking strictly defense tells us we're going to have a really good offense in 2023, and I'd bet a lot of money on that. But you would definitely like to add some depth on the defensive side of the ball. And I have no questions that Mike Norvell will do his due diligence in the portal, as we've seen him do since the day he stepped on campus.
Yeah, I feel really good about where Florida State's offense is. I feel really good about the defense too, if I'm being honest, as far as starters go. I do think the depth could be improved, and I think that's a lot of what we're looking at. Some of these guys could come in and challenge at that safety position. I don't think anybody's challenging, our starters on that linebacking crew and that defensive line unit. But I do think that you could potentially see depth improved at defensive end, linebacker, and safety. You probably would want to see that improved. And so maybe some of these guys that we're talking about would be targets. Maybe they won't. We'll see kind of how Florida State, it ebbs and flows pretty quickly. As we're recording this, I think that Keon Coleman, a wide receiver from Michigan State, who I think ran a 4.45 the last time I saw anything on him, he could certainly stretch the field for you. He could be a big piece, again, if you were going to go after a wide receiver and go that route. I think you could also have a couple of guys on the roster step up. I want to talk about this, and then we'll wrap up and get out of here. Again, comment your thoughts below, or if there are guys that you're interested in, maybe we'll feature them in our next portal update video. But I do think there are guys on this roster that can stretch the field. I think Deuce Spann is potentially that guy. I think Winston Wright could be that guy. I think Ja'Kai Douglas could be that guy. He gets kind of used in some gadget formations and some different things. I'm excited to see a full healthy year out of him. So again, yeah, wide receiver is probably the least of my concerns. If you found that true speedster that you really had confidence in, he was going to stretch the field, maybe you take a gamble there, maybe take a throw at that. But I really do think that Span, Douglas, maybe Winston Wright will end up being those guys for you down the stretch. Hey, if you like this video, if you enjoyed the content, do us a favor and hit that thumbs up button. Comment your thoughts below. Who you think Florida State should definitely get involved with. Is there anybody that we missed on this? Again, don't get on me for Keon Coleman. That happened while we were recording. But if there's anybody else that you think we should go after, maybe drop a name down in the comments out of the portal. We will talk about them again either in our next one or in the Discord chat. You can find the link to that below in the description. Again, appreciate our partners over at Garnet and Gold. If you missed our recruiting update on a huge 5-star update from Jonathan Daniels, you can do me a favor and click it right now on the screen to watch it.